Hey y'all, I'm Krista and welcome to Real Talk and Redemption. I've been married for just over 17 years, and to this day, I am still relying on some of my granny's old school marriage advice. Her and my papa were married for 58 years, and they had a very solid relationship. It wasn't a perfect marriage, but it was definitely solid. So when my granny spoke and gave marriage advice, which she did plenty of times over the years, I made sure that I listened. And there was four things that she said that I think were some of the most impactful and pivotal things that can be applied to pretty much any marriage. So those are what I'm going to share with you today. The first one is about advice. Her advice was about advice, and she would say, take what works and leave what doesn't, stating that be open to hearing the different advice that people have to give to you, but don't feel obligated that you have to take it. Even her own advice, she was saying that the key is that you're going to go through different stages in your marriage and in your life where some advice may be applicable to you if others doesn't mean you should be dismissive to anything anybody has to say, because you never know what they're saying, how much value it has to you at right currently or at later on in life. But to be conscious of what advice would actually work for you and your spouse. You want to customize your marriage to what works for you. You guys are two unique individuals becoming one and building a life together. So every piece of advice is not going to be applicable for you. What works for one couple may not work for, someone else. And she would tell me, hey, what works for me and your grandfather may not work for you and Wes, and what works for Wes and I may not work for you or for someone else. So you want to make sure that you're taking advice and applying what you think will be beneficial for the both of you. You want to customize your marriage. This is for you. And don't get hung up in what somebody else's marriage looks like, because that's only a small little picture of what you're seeing at that particular time. And you want to build something that's going to work for the both of you. And it may not even look traditional, but it needs to work for you. Customize your marriage. If my homegirl's husband is giving her foot massages and back massages every other Sunday, that doesn't mean that my husband is going to, or that what that's even would be applicable for me or for anybody else. Or they're really good at planning date nights, or they're cooking, or they're doing this, or they're working two jobs to make sure that they can have this and this and that. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's what your husband is going to do, and it doesn't mean that that's what they necessarily should do. You want to figure out the two of you should be coming together and listening to advice that is given, and doesn't always have to be from someone who's had a successful marriage, because sometimes people who've had a failed marriage can give you some pretty good advice too. They can help you avoid some of the mistakes that they did or that their spouse did. So there's value in pretty much all kinds of advice, and just use your discernment to determine what advice is going to be best for you and your spouse. Next piece of advice she gave was number two, which was, if you make a commitment, stick with it, which was big in my granny's generation. They were all about keeping your word. And I'm about that too, but not at the expense of, staying with someone who is betraying you and then they're, defying all of the boundaries that you've set, or in an abusive relationship or anything like that. That's not what her or myself were saying to you. You want to make sure that you're in a healthy relationship, not a physically or emotionally or verbally abusive relationship or anything like that. But when she says make it, if you make a commitment, stick with it, it's just kind of her way of saying, take divorce off the table. If you take divorce off the table and you guys are facing some trials and tribulations, you're forced to figure it out. Because if that's not an option, what are you going to do? If divorce is not an option, you're going to figure it out. So it's just not, in this generation, it just seems like, oh, I don't feel good. Oh, I don't like him, or this and this and that. If something changes, it's all about your feelings, that it's just, oh, I'll just get a divorce. Oh, I'll just get a divorce. I'll just get a divorce. She said, take divorce off the table. Honor the commitment that you made in the beginning through, sickness and in health and for better or for worse and things of that sort, and put in the work. And if you put in the work, majority of the time on the other end of it, it's going to be all worth it for you. Now, the next piece of advice she gave is, you won't always be in love with each other. And let me tell you, when she said that to me, I was just like, okay, I was smiling, like, Yeah, and I just automatically assumed, okay, that may have been the case for you and my papa, but for me and Wes, it's gonna be different. Where that we had that high school love and we reconnected later on in life and we were building this whole thing. So I just assumed, okay, yeah, I know that was the case with you guys, but we're gonna be different. We're always gonna be in love with each other. We've worked too hard to get here. Well, that was my young, naive self thinking, like somewhat being dismissive, the very thing that you're not supposed to be dismissive of that advice, because that was very true. And what I did is when I changed my perspective about it, because I just thought it was like, oh, this bad thing when you fell out of love with each other. But I look at it now as an opportunity to fall back in love with each other. When you get married, say for instance, you get married at 18, well, by the time you're 25, there should be some growth. You should have evolved some. I mean, obviously, your foundational and your core things would remain the same, but that person should have grown and evolved. And then that may be a time when, if you guys didn't happen to grow together, that for you to learn who that person is, discover the new version of them, and fall back in love with that version of them. And the same thing goes for you. There should be some growth and some evolution in the relationship and what you in your own individual lives as well as together. So the same person that you are 18, definitely you shouldn't be that same exact person at 30 or at 40, or if that's you got married at 25. By the time you're 35, 40, 50, and so forth, there should be some growth. And it's just an opportunity for you to step back and learn who the new version of the 30-year-old of you, the 50-year-old, or whatever it is, and fall in love with that person. So it doesn't have to be this negative thing. Sometimes it is a hard thing because you want everything to always say smooth and happy go lucky and all of those cool things and stuff like that. But honestly, that's not usually how it goes in the real world. So, whatever, just keep in mind that you may not always be in love with each other. There may even be periods of time where you don't even like each other, but just stay committed to the commitment that you've made and just rediscovering the new version that you guys are changing and evolving into, and fall and make a point to fall in love with each other over and over again. How exciting is that? So that's definitely a cool opportunity and a way to look at that particular advice. Now, as promised, I want to go ahead and talk to you about the fourth piece of marriage advice that my granny gave me, the one that I said was the hardest for me to apply to my life, but it also was the most impactful for me in my life, which is she told me the advice was shut up and let a man be a man. But that's it right there. Yeah, I was not well received at all. I was rebuking that all the way, and I struggled with it a lot because I was just like, how is this woman who's raised me to be outgoing, outspoken, independent, and things of that sort now telling me to sit back and be a doormat, let a man say whatever he wants and walk all over me and all of those different things. But the truth is that's not what she said. That's what I heard, but that's not what she said. What she was really saying is that you don't always have to open your mouth. You don't always have to say something. There is power and strength in being quiet. And I didn't hear that at that time. I learned later on, obviously learned that. But the truth of the matter is there, it takes a lot of strength to just be quiet. And what she was saying is be quiet, pause. You don't always have to say something. Give your husband, your spouse, an opportunity to lead, to have that space. What she was saying is you both can't be driving the car at the same time. And the minute your husband is driving and you grab that wheel, that steering wheel, you're creating tension in the relationship. Don't get me wrong, there's going to be times when you need to be driving the car, and then you'll drive the car at those times. What she was saying is take a step back. And I know it may be hard for some of you that is used to being in control and to release that type of control, but trust me when I say there's so much power and being quiet and allowing someone to sit in their experiences, to sit with the information that you've given them, the things that you've shared with them, and giving them an opportunity to show up and show out for you. So when she was saying, shut up and let a man be a man, she was saying, be quiet. You don't always have to speak. Give him an opportunity to show up for you and to lead. And some, it maybe take longer than others for some, but that's okay. You still want to go ahead and still give that opportunity. And the things that you would see at the end will be phenomenal. I mean, it was very hard for me to apply that one. It took many, many years and a lot of do-overs and do-overs and do-overs, but it's been one of the things that have been most impactful. And not just for my relationship with my husband, but just in relationships in general, with my siblings, with my parents, with colleagues, with my children, I don't always have to speak and I don't always have to say something. There is power in silence. And sometimes that's even more pivotal when you're in a space where you may not say the most loving and kind things. The Bible talks about there's the there's power of the life and the death is in the tongue. And there's so many scriptures that talk about speaking and not speaking and what you say. Uh, there's a couple of scriptures that come to mind, which is Proverbs 18:21 and then Proverbs 21:23. And then Proverbs 18:21, it says, the tongue can bring death or life. Those who love to talk will reap the consequences. And then in Proverbs 21:28, it says, watch your tongue, keep your mouth shut, and you will stay out of trouble. So my granny her advice was really somewhat biblical. Obviously, she didn't give it to me in a biblical way, but it was about being quiet, that you don't always have to speak. And those scriptures in itself, to me, reflect just the power in being quiet and being in that experience, because you don't always have to say something. Now, when my granny gave advice, the advice that she gave me in marriage was very hard, but it was very impactful and it was very transformational in my marriage when I actually chose to use it and apply it and things of that sort. So I would love to hear if someone in your life has given you some marriage advice that you think has been pivotal, very pivotal and impactful. I would love to hear it. Don't keep it to yourself. Share the love, share it with the rest of us. Put a comment down sharing what that piece of advice is, or even if it's somebody who didn't have a successful marriage and what they said don't do. Love to hear that too. And if there's anything in this video that spoke to you, that you enjoyed, feel free, go ahead and hit that like button or subscribe, and I will see you soon.